Well, hello, good evening and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you most kindly for joining us. Tonight on the program, we examine the fresh claims that could test Nigeria's national security posture and its diplomatic balance. A recent report alleges that $2 billion was paid through, 2 billion naira, I beg your pardon, was paid through the Office of the National Security Advisor to secure the release of more than 300 abducted students in Niger State. The money was reportedly delivered to a Boko Haram commander identified as Aliyu. If true, the claim contradicts the federal government's earlier position that no ransom was paid for the students' release. Now, this report by the AFP said to rely on multiple intelligence sources, raising hard questions about transparency, counterterrorism policy, and the message such payments may send to armed groups across the country and indeed, by extension, the region. At the same time, Nigeria is facing pressure from the United States Congress, which is calling for tougher diplomatic measures linked to allegations of religious persecution. The development comes amid broader U.S. scrutiny of Nigeria's ties, with China and Russia, a move analysts say could strain Abuja's strategic partnership with other global players. So tonight on the program, the big question is, was ransom paid? And what does that particular development mean or signpost for Nigeria's national security? And how should Nigeria respond to growing diplomatic pressure from Washington? We'll be speaking with two individuals who have not just an idea, but a good sense of what is actually playing out and its ramifications on Nigeria's national security. But first, let's bring you up to speed with the day's latest in politics.
Leaders of the African Democratic Congress and the New Nigeria People's Party have asked the National Assembly to reopen the Electoral Act for fresh amendments. Speaking for opposition parties in Abuja, NNPP National Chairman Ahmed urged lawmakers to remove what he described as objectionable provisions in the law. Top opposition figures present included former Senate President David Mack, NNPP Chieftain Buba Galadima, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, and Labour Party's 2023 presidential candidate Peter Obi. The All Progressives Congress has denied involvement in the reported shooting in Benin City, accusing the African Democratic Congress of politicizing the incident. Yunus Atanku, national coordinator of the Obedient Movement, alleged that Peter Obi and ADC leaders were attacked at the residence of former Edo Governor John Odigi Oyegun.
Right, a recap of some of the day's latest political developments. Well, before we get to talk about Nigeria's national security question, let's bring you the very latest from that World Press Conference by leadership and leaders of the opposition political parties in Abuja earlier in the day. Their rejection of the newly signed 2026 Electoral Act, their take on what that represents for Nigeria's democracy and the battle ahead in 2027.
Leaders across party lines converge in Abuja with a common message that Nigeria's democracy is under strain. Despite internal differences, key opposition figures stood together to criticize the electoral amendment recently signed into law by President Bola Tinubu. They argued that certain provisions in the new law could weaken transparency and public confidence ahead of 2027.
Already, we are confronted with a citizenry that is increasingly cynical of our democracy and what it promises. The trust deficit widens exponentially on a daily basis. Citizen disengagement, voter apathy, the erosion of rule of law, and the desecration of our institutions have become emblematic of our democracy. Majority of our people are losing faith in democracy. This is a very dangerous trend, and that we only have to arrest by truly handing power to the people.
Speakers at the briefing accused the ruling APC of eroding trusts in the electoral system. They also alleged a resurgence of political intimidation and violence, warning that the current climate sets a worrying tone for the next general election.
What legitimacy in a country of over 200 million people and only 10% of the electorates in 2023 came out to vote. Do the arithmetic. The entire votes for the presidential election was less than 24 million, which is just approximately 11% of the total number of the people. Is there legitimacy?
Buhari wanted electoral reform. So a few ministers went to him, convinced him not to sign, that if he signed, Russia will hack the system and impose the wrong president on us. And he refused to sign. The same people are now shouting electoral reform. Tinubu will one day shout for electoral reform. He will. If he doesn't shout, those who are supporting him will do what? Shout for electoral reform.
Today, there's no governance in Nigeria. The legislative arm is at its worst. The judiciary is no longer hope of the weak or the poor. We all know insecurity, killings, and abductions is worse than even countries at war.
What you must bear in mind is that the collapse of democracy in Nigeria is going to lead to the collapse of democracy in Africa, because we are the largest democracy in Africa. These are some of the consequences that will definitely affect other democracies in Africa. So I will urge that, or I will call other opposition parties that are not here today to make sure that they are part of this movement of the unity of the opposition parties to ensure we restore our democracy.
The level of thuggery that has been introduced into politics now, it has never been this much. We haven't started campaign, and now you can imagine what will happen when we start campaign. The only reason that APC is desperate is because they're sure they cannot win the next election in a free and fair contest.
The opposition called on Nigerians to remain vigilant and defend democratic institutions, insisting that credible elections remain central to national stability. It, however, remains to be seen if the National Assembly will respond to the opposition demand for a review. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, one of the biggest political developments of the day regarding the position of opposition leaders, opposition parties who outrightly reject the new Electoral Act while expressing other concerns about the polity and what is playing out as Nigerians prepare for the battle ahead in 2027. Let's turn our attention back to the conversation of the day, which is national security and what the past couple of days have been about. Beyond the recommendations by Congressman Riley's committee recommending some tough measures for Nigeria to adopt to guarantee safety and security of Christians in Nigeria, there is a wider conversation about whether or not Nigeria's government is a part of the problem, because several reporting that has been done over the last couple of days has indicated that sources confirmed to AFP exactly that some $7 million, as the case may be, might have been used to secure the release of the close to 300 students that were abducted in Niger State. You might remember that incident from last year, alongside many other abductions in Kwara, in Kogi, and in other parts of the North Central. Now, the government outrightly denies that this actually happened. But what can we make of the facts of the matter, and how does that explain the ongoing situation with Nigeria's security challenge? Let's bring in our panel. Dr. Sani, Aliyu, and Dr. Steve Okwori will be helping us unpack the implications of these developments, as we also take a deeper look at the much talked about committee recommendations because of Nigeria's new designation as a country of particular concern. Gentlemen, good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's good to see you this evening.
Good evening, and we are glad to be here too.
Right, so where do we start from? I mean, it's a lot of he said, they said, we said, Nigerian government says, what they think is actually playing out. But internationally, the perception is that the Nigerian government is somewhat compromised in our national security architecture. First, your initial thoughts on what the AFP is reporting about Nigerian government paying ransom to secure the release of abducted students.
Excuse me.
Doctor, yeah.
For
yeah,
me?
Yeah.
Okay. I should set the ball rolling, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here to give my perspective on issues trending. Unfortunately, we're where we are, talking about insecurity in Nigeria. I happened to do my PhD thesis, that was like 2-3 years ago, on kidnapping for ransom. I criticized the national security strategy with regards to the content when it has to do with kidnapping in Nigeria, particularly for ransom. 2 billion naira is not small money. And with regards to the adoption of the 300 or more students or children with staff from that particular school in Niger, there was this confidence when the National Security Advisor went, will I say, call it a solidarity visit or what visit, to the proprietor of that school, the bishop of the Catholic Church in that particular region. If you see the assurance when the NSA was talking, guaranteeing the proprietor and parents that their children, students, were in safe hands, and guaranteeing that they were going to return back safe. I was wondering what he was relying on. Coming to hear this allegation of 2 billion paid. Don't forget that ransom payment is criminalized. The last Senate, if I recall vividly, amended the Terrorism Provision and the Prohibition and Prevention Act and said that if ransom is paid for victims and it's established that either families or friends or loved ones pay ransom, the minimum jail term is 15 years. Then I begin to wonder, then why should government allegedly pay ransom for children to be released? It's an allegation. The government has come out to deny. But I'm aware of back channel being used when we find ourselves in situations like this. You don't expect government to come out clearly or plainly to tell you that this is what they did, conditions that they had to go into with kidnappers or bandits that have abducted children. Don't forget that these bandits or adopt kidnappers or whatever they call them now, they cannot go into a community or go into a school and ferry children in that number, and you expect them to release them just like that without meeting up some certain conditions or negotiations. From what I've read, about 2 Boko Haram commanders were also released, based on the conditions that they had between them and government. But the point here is, whatever might have happened is against counter-terrorism principle when we're talking about ransom being paid. Totally. And if the government made that mistake, I call it mistake, if they did pay that ransom, the implication here is that there's a risk we are financing more violence attack. Because you and I know that these resources will be used to expand their network and to sustain themselves. So expanding their network now means that more arms and ammunition will be bought, more vulnerable Nigerians will be recruited into their fold. And what that means is that we will continue to experience these insecurity issues or challenges that is or has been bedeviling Nigeria in the last 2 decades or so.
Right. And Dr. Sani, bringing you into the conversation, I suppose you've had a chance to read what the AFP is reporting, and you've heard the counter from the government about what it says happened. Who is more convincing in your mind about what is more realistically the thing that played out?
Well, my colleague here, Dr. Steve, has actually analyzed the situation. It is heart-rending to note that such allegation will even come up, because it is not, like he said, part of the bargain in terms of countering terrorism. The moment you give money to terrorists or bandits, you are actually empowering them again. And so, but as it is now, it's just an allegation. I think there's need to be expanded investigation in the matter. But given to the body language, Dr. Steve said, regarding to the National Security Advisor's visit to the incident site, and his assertions and confidence and assurances given that nothing will happen to the children, they are in safe hand, then you began to become worried as to if this allegation has not found in place. So what is most worrisome is that if you look at the incidents after this particular kidnapping of these children, you will see there were a lot of attacks that start springing out immediately after. That is another way to show you that these bandits or terrorists have actually been empowered more. The fight against terrorism, like I keep saying, does not stop at allowing situations to happen before you start running helter-skelter on how you are going to stop or wade into the incident. What you need to do as a country or as a counter-terrorism organization, which we don't have in Nigeria, and that is why you see we are still this problem is still lingering, because as it is today, Nigerians don't have any organization or institution called counter-terrorism organization with its full soldiers. Apart from that National Security Office and the building that they call counter-terrorism office without full soldiers, I don't know what they do there. I think maybe they sit down to discuss issues based on I don't know, because the moment you have an institution or a counter-terrorism agency saddled with the responsibility, constitutional responsibility to counter terrorism, now it goes beyond the kinetic aspect. You start dealing with the remote causes of such activities, one. Those non-kinetic aspects, you start looking into them and start working towards solving this situation before any occurrence of such again. But as it is today, it happens in Niger. It happens in Kwara. It keeps replaying almost all part of the north and north central region. And as I keep warning, and it's still if you go to the southwest and southeast, there are fragments of such kidnappings that happen every now and then, even in Benin. So you began to wonder what is actually happening. Is the government really serious about fighting or countering this terrorism or banditry? Because if they are, when the former President Olusegun Obasanjo was in power, the economic effect and human loss in terms of vandalization was not this much when he quickly looked back and saw civil defense and quickly make them a government agency, given the responsibility of protecting critical government installations in Nigeria, and which they are doing quite well. Over almost, it's getting almost to 2 decades now. We are still fighting a cause that has tagged Nigeria at one time the 3rd most terrorized country in the world. Buhari came with his own strategy and managed to bring Nigeria out from 3rd position to 8th position. Today, we are back to 6th position. In fact, in recent analysis, they are saying we are going to become 4th most terrorized country in the world. Are we really progressing? We know we go 3, 4, 5 steps forward, and we start coming backward again.
Right.
And this is because the government really still have not seen it necessary to institutionalize an institution called a counter-terrorism agency that will be given the constitutional responsibility to study and wade into countering terrorism, both at home and in the international space.
Right. And Dr. Okwori, if we have to consider the economics of the crisis that has become the new normal in Nigeria today, whether it's Boko Haram, terrorism, or other terrorist activities, including the banditry that has now swept over much of the northwest and the north central, is there a need to look at it from a fresh perspective about the money that goes in, armament, for instance, and the driving factors between the perpetrators themselves and the ones who are providing them some sort of supply chain solutions, whether it's arming them, because we've seen some of these videos, for instance, of bandit leaders who say, listen, we got 40 million plus. What did you do with the money? We bought more weapons because this is what we need to continue with the business. So is there a need to look at it from a different perspective other than the fact that they're just terrorizing people, but there's a whole economy around the crisis, the conflicts, the killing and the destruction that Nigeria has been witnessing for the past 2 decades?
Unfortunately, we have found ourselves as a country in this quagmire. Boko Haram started in 2009. We're talking about 17 years gone. When it was first established that Nigeria is a terrorist nation, what the government at that time did was that they debunked it. They didn't believe, they didn't accept it. Now the reality is staring at us. In 2009, it was just Boko Haram that was the particular primary threat. But as we are talking now in your studio, we now have ISWAP, Ansaru, Mahmuda, Wulu. There's also the Lakurawa and all that. Boko Haram gave birth to all these other ones. But Lakurawa, of course, came all the way from Mali and all that. You know how they came? They settled in Kebbi, pretended that they were providing security because government was not providing security for these local communities. Now he's telling on us. Some couple of days ago, the GOC of that region, the commander of operations, Fasten Yemma, or what you call it now, was attacked. He was almost killed. Now the point here is that as a country, are we serious in addressing these issues of terrorism, banditry, and all that? From 2024 to 2025, 2.56 billion naira was also paid as ransom. Now, what we're experiencing today, it is no longer ideological. It is economic. They are taking these resources from Nigerians, also taking these resources from government. What are they using these resources for? You and I know that they are using it to expand their network, whether we like it or not. They are using it to sustain themselves. In this country, we see terrorists, they own drones, they own gun trucks. They use all manners of sophisticated technology against a government. So a couple of months ago, General Uba was killed by terrorists. We have seen situations where Colonel Paiko, Lieutenant Colonel Paiko and 8 other soldiers, see, from 2021 to 2022, April to August, we lost 750 soldiers. Our military bases were attacked by these terrorists. And here we are hearing an allegation that government paid 2 billion. Do you know how much is 2 billion? Do you know the damage that sum can cause to this country?
If you have to give an alternative explanation about what could have played out, say for instance, we would like to believe that the government did not pay the ransom. Is there any other explanation that could explain why a terrorist group like the bandits that abducted close to 300 students would willingly let them go?
Let me tell you something. When it has to do with adoption or kidnappings, 3 things. It's either the victims are rescued. What it means when we hear or say that they are rescued, it means that there was a confrontation. Government operatives, security personnel confronting these criminals. Right. When we hear of rescue, it means that there's a possibility of casualties on the side of either the perpetrators or the government the security operatives. Right. Not minding the victims now, they might also fall under casualty. Right. In this country, recall the train attack where about 60-something Nigerians were kidnapped and 1 Pakistani. How much was paid? The minimum amount that was paid was 100 million naira. At some point, about 40-something of Nigerians couldn't afford that ransom. There was a committee that was set up by the then Chief of Defense Staff, Nduka Irabo. At the end of the day, those 40-something persons were released. There's a story around the release of those 40-something number of Nigerians. So what I'm saying here is that a lot of things happen. Let me use the words of Fela, government magic. When these things happen, Nigerians are not privileged, except when journalists carry out investigative journalism, like what has happened, and it has now come to the public space that we hear allegedly the Nigerian government paid 2 billion for the release of the... When former President Buhari was in power, it was also allegedly said that close to 3 million euros was paid as ransom to release those children in Katsina and one other, was it Zamfara also? So when we hear these stories that government pay ransom, it is not left for the government to come out to tell Nigerians. We're talking about transparency and accountability here with regards to national security architecture.
Right. And Dr. Aliyu, how honest can a government be when it comes to situations like this? Because, I mean, they're not regular, everyday governmental activities that you want to share all the details with. But what is acceptable in situations like this where the government cannot give a full disclosure of what happened because it has to maintain some level of privacy, protecting sources and whatnot? And how much of it is lacking right now? Because you get the sense that the public is not on the side of the government. It is safe to say that there is an unhealthy suspicion about everything that the government does when it comes to insecurity.
I wouldn't mind to hear that the government gave out ransom to Boko Haram or to bandits and round them up at the spending end of the money. Because that is strategic.
Exactly.
You give them marked money, they go out to buy or to spend anywhere in the world. You have already used your Interpol and other sources to communicate the monies that you have already marked out. Wherever they go to buy, you start rounding them up. That is strategic. You are using the funds to coin them in and get them. But whereas such monies are spent without any arrest, they go scot-free, I think it's very disturbing. If you look at individual kidnapped people in Nigeria and family source giving out ransom, they use banks, they use telephones. We have MTN and other telecoms in Nigeria. I have never heard or seen where they played a role in terms of rounding up kidnappers or bandits. And they use regular telephones. They use regular communication system. So it began to become a very worrisome situation. That are we not looking inwardly to see that there are some people, like Jonathan has said, former President Jonathan, that in his government, even in the presidency, he alleged that there are Boko Harams in it. Because some strategic discussions, the following day, Sheka will call them and say, we had this is what you have said, or he will mention it on the public space. And this is just something that is closely discussed within the villa. So,
you're saying there's a chance that there are people in government today who benefit from these ransom payments? Of course,
the government know it. The government know it. Even the other time, El-Rufai was talking, and he was saying he was shocked that some certain people in government, that the government is aware of the role they played in terms of these bandits and other terrorist activities in the country. We are not apprehended. So, are we actually being patriotic? Do we have a country? Are we really looking at the future of this country? Today, Nigeria is being, from that global perspective of the great Nigeria, is becoming a very weak Nigeria, because we have not those values we nurtured in this country that are much more better than money have been left long ago. Everything that is about Nigerian value now is money. You will not respect anybody until he has money. Even in the nucleus family, the guy that has money will be the pleasant discussant with the father and the mother of the family. While this elder that doesn't have money, living with them within the same house, may not understand what is happening like that person that is abroad, that is not even in the country, because they won't discuss anything with you because you don't have nothing to contribute, you don't have money to give. So these values that we have dropped, that everything about us now is just how much you have. There is one politician that is today head of the section of the government that says, what money cannot give you, more money will give you. And we are still living also, so we are still having such people in the government. So it is a situation where people within the government likely have compromised. And that's why this thing, they are not following the right path to deal with the situation. Because as far as I'm concerned, this situation is doable. We can deal with this situation if we are truly honest and we are patriotic, we love our country, and we want this country to sustain for the future generations to come and meet a country called Nigeria. Right. We can deal with this situation within the time frame limit of 1.5 or 6 months.
Right. And Dr. Okwori, speaking of those back channels, what is the best international practice here? So much so that it doesn't look like the government is being taken advantage of or taken for a ride by non-state actors like bandits or other terrorist groups that are operating. What sort of relationship can a government have with a deadly terrorist organization such as the ones that have been ravaging and destroying communities across different parts of the country?
You see, A government is a government. They have that sovereign power. They have the authority. Don't forget that the primary responsibility of government, Section 14(2)(b), that has become so popular now and common, is security and welfare. Now, when you begin to look at the situation of the country, as I'm speaking to you, some couple of days ago, killings happened in Nigeria. Families are bereaved, they are mourning and all that, the death of their loved ones. It almost happens on a daily basis now. You cannot go and begin to tell those families that that section of the Constitution, the government is fulfilling it. If you put it back side by side, is the government fulfilling that section of the Constitution? Nigerians are killed. Tomorrow is 50 in Zamfara. 2 days. The next tomorrow is how many numbers that we cannot even see. As we are talking in your studio today, we don't know what will happen this night. Tomorrow, a breaking news will be out there. It is the government's responsibility. The National Assembly, some couple of months ago, they amended or they tried to see how to propose a law. Kidnapping for kidnappers, death penalty. If we are hearing that the National Assembly is proposing a law, death penalty for kidnappers, and we are hearing that government is allegedly paying ransom to terrorists, any government that goes this route is a complete sign of weakness. Complete sign of weakness, whether we like it or not. So
those back channels,
unfortunately,
no need to have them?
They are back channels, but it's against the law of the land. The law clearly says that if you pay ransom, 15 years minimum in jail if it's established. And I've said it here that paying of ransom is against counter-terrorism principle. You are emboldening these criminals. That's what it means. Dr. Sani said it here. You are emboldened. It means that there's no deterrence. There's no penalty. So when we're talking about intentional or potential criminals that want to go into this act, what will now serve as deterrent? Oh, man, let us not go into it too. This is the penalty for it. There's nothing like that. Rather, we are seeing situations where Boko Haram that have ravaged communities, widows, women turned widows, men widowers, children orphans and all that. They are being granted amnesty, they are being granted repentance and all that. So where is the deterrence? So the implication here is that the law, when it has to do with terrorism acts, we keep amending this act. Contained in this act are laws, penalties. One of the sections of that terrorism act, Prevention and Prohibition Act, that in the event where you and I, for instance, sit and discuss, not necessarily carrying out the act, planning how we want to go and carry out act of terrorism, either suicide bombing or kidnappings, or these are all acts of terrorism, forceful marriages and all that. In the event where you and I are planning with Dr. Sani, we have not carried out the act, and the government gets on us and establishes that we had this conversation, the minimum jail term is 20 years. So we are talking about people that have carried out the act. And you are saying that they should be pardoned.
So this is, to put it plainly, double standard on the government side.
Absolutely. That's what it means. The terrorists that struck in Kano, I think 2012 or so, that a lot of members of that particular church died. When he was arrested, at the end of the day, after being tried for a period of time, was it not last year, 2025, he was grieving judgment, and he was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment, and he should be run concurrently, meaning that from 2012 that he was arrested till when he was given judgment in 2025, how many years does he have to spend in jail? When you, of course, you know how the prison term runs, day and night, it's counted. So there is no penalty that will serve as deterrent. So there must be strict punishment, right? We must have to see how to increase the penalty.
Right, okay. Let's talk about the pressure from the international community, especially the Americans, and how their categorization, or the Trump administration's categorization of Nigeria's CPC designation has brought a lot more attention to Nigeria's security challenges. And we're just going to show you some of the recent recommendations that have been made by the committee that oversaw the last couple of weeks, the engagement with the Nigerian government, as well as all the other developments, and how they've come to the conclusion that these are the recommendations that need to pass. However, we're going to just focus on the controversial one, so we can open up the screen so that people can see it. Obviously, this is one of the recommendations. We could just pause here for a moment. Label Fulani militias, terror groups, review and possible designation of some Fulani groups as foreign terrorist organizations. We obviously know what that means. As far as the Americans are concerned, the activities of herdsmen in especially the Middle Belt area or the North Central is a part of the problem. Dr. Sani, looking at this particular recommendation, for instance, and what the Americans are saying is the way forward, right? Because they also have an economic component to it by recommending that there is a need to block beef exports to force disarmament. What do you make of what the Americans are bringing to the table and telling the Nigerian government about how to manage this particular situation?
First of all, I will say this little adage in Hausa, but I will translate it in English, that if the wall did not crack, the lizard wouldn't have a space to enter. Whatever America is doing is for the interest of America. Not one bit is the interest of Nigeria. They will not tell us how to run our country. They will not tell us that they understood our problems more than us. In one place, you are saying, okay, Fulani, you are calling them militia group, that you are going to disarm them. In the other side, you are saying you are going to arm the farmers. You give them legal arms. So what are they trying to constitute in Nigeria? They want to constitute hatred between the tribes in Nigeria. I will tell you without unequivocally that American interest is to divide this country, is to balkanize Nigeria. It is nothing to do with Christianity. It has nothing to do with any tribe or regional interest. It is the economy of Nigeria. They have, before this thing, I've said that what they are interested in is to hit on China and Russia. I said it in one television program about 2-3 months ago, that Americans are only interested in the economies of Nigeria. And you see, whatever points they are bringing now, the undertone, they have already let it out. You have to divest your armaments from Russian armaments. You have to divest armaments from China or investment of China, and you have to invest in America. That's just their interest. If my brothers and sisters in Nigeria or in the Middle Belt, all the Christians in Nigeria, all the Muslims in Nigeria think that America are interested to solving the Christian problem, I think they are compounding more problems than what we have. And let me tell you, whatever they are saying, whatever way they are looking, you're talking about it. What is America? Is America a Christian nation? Go to the street of America. How many of them are Christians? The issue is, we open ourselves for them to come in. Our brothers in some churches, the bishops that think they will go and get some money and support from America, they start snapping on unnecessary pictures, going to their congresses and talk what they are not supposed to be talking, just to get something in their churches and in their pockets. These are the guys that open this palace, You
wouldn't say the government's inability to address insecurity
the issue is
the major issue here?
Look, who are the government? The people are the government. We, the people of Nigeria, are the problem of this country. And until we start seeing it from that perspective, who are the government? The government are not from heaven. Tinubu was one time in opposition, carrying placards. You cannot remove subsidy in Nigeria. Today is the president of Nigeria. He removed subsidy. So what are we deceiving? Are we here to deceive ourselves? It's better we start looking at ourselves and tell ourselves the truth. We are indivisible. When the Americans are saying Christian in the Middle Belt, I began to wonder, Who are the Christian, who are the Muslim in the Middle Belt? When in a house in Plateau, you will see a Muslim, you will see a Christian. When you go to Taraba, in the same family, you see a Muslim, you see a Christian. When you go to Benue, in the same family, you see a Christian, you see a Muslim. How will they divide these people? Myself, that I'm talking, I married from Kaduna State. My wife's parents are Christian. She's a Muslim. My own self, my mother is from Edo State. My father is from Zaria. My mother's sister in my house now is a Christian. The surviving sister of my mother is a Christian, and I'm a Muslim. And we are living in peace. I have friends, Christian brothers. We relate, we eat, we do Christmas together, we do everything together. These killings that attack Christian and Muslim Christians, it's us politicians that are tagging these things. That's what they call divide and rule.
Right.
So we can solve our problem. We have gone into civil war in this country. We didn't need any foreign country to come and solve this, bring us out from the civil war. We went into the civil war ourselves, we came out ourselves, and we are still united. The Igbos are our brothers, we have investment in their land, they have investment everywhere in the country. Does that, I don't understand. Americans are just here to balkanize this country. Honestly, I'm telling Tinubu to be very, very, very wary of America, especially National Security Advisor, because they only have 4 years or 8 years. Nigeria is more than 4 or 8 years. Right. Nigeria is a sovereign state. We cannot compromise our sovereignty for America to come and tell us what to do. Shit here and don't shit here. Peace here and don't peace here. Relate here and don't relate here. It's not possible.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes to spare, so Dr. Okwori, clearly Dr. Sani feels very emotional about, about this particular issue.
Yeah.
But what do you make of the overall content of the recommendations? Where do you see the positives and where do you see the negatives? If you can recap that in 2 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay, 2 minutes. You see, I understand where Dr. Sani is coming from. And the fact is, we're all involved in this. Christians are killed, Muslims are killed. Non-Christians and non-Muslims are also killed in all of this. Every tribe, every religion have bad eggs. Right. So, it happened in Kwara. The numbers of persons that were slaughtered in Kayama local government, and all, they were over 200, and they were Muslims. Right. It happened in Yelwata and Benue, Christians. So the point here is that Nigerians are killed. The Fulanis, they have bad eggs. Every tribe, just the way I said, we have bad eggs. Now the point is, we should not begin to put it at this point where the Muslims will begin to see Christians as bad people, or Christians begin to see Muslims as bad people. From 1960 to date, if we had leadership, committed leadership, would have been self-reliant in a way. We won't find ourselves in a situation where America will want to begin to detect for us. Don't hobnob with Russia. Don't hobnob with China. It will not be left for us to choose, not for America to choose on our behalf. We will choose who we want to have bilateral relationship with. And we will detect.
What do you make about the China point, about the protection money they allegedly, according to the report, paid to herdsmen, militia groups for protection, where the American Congress or the committee in the Congress in the United States believe is one of the reasons why we're seeing an escalation in violence in the North Central and in the Northwest?
You see, this violence have been there, whether we like it or not. The violence that we experience now started in this democracy. Terrorism started in 2009. Banditry around 2018. They were labeled bandits by former President, late Muhammadu Buhari and all that. Kidnapping for ransom started around 2006. So the current violence that we experience in this country, I don't want to believe that there was some narrative out there that necessitated or we are experiencing what we are experiencing today. These criminal elements are here. Some of them are foreigners. They come in here, collaborate with our domestic criminals that are Nigerians to inflict this pain on us. Now, it is now left for government to fulfill that section of the Constitution of guaranteeing and prioritizing the security of Nigerians. Thank God today we have a new IGP. Now, he has been given the mandate as the lead agency in terms of leading the agencies when it has to do with addressing internal security. The man is there. Let us see what he can do to see how to help address these issues confronting Nigeria today. The fact is, we must work as a country. Nigeria belongs to all of us. If Nigeria collapses, the politicians will find their way because they have access to funds that they can have access to taxpayers' money. A lot of us that are out here, we don't have access to these funds. So if Nigeria collapses, it will collapse on us. It won't collapse on them. The point is, as Nigerians, we must see that we also contribute our own quota, if the government is ready to listen. But by the grace of God, we shouldn't over-rely on the foreign world to be able to help address our issues. When we come together in synergy, we can help address these issues.
Gentlemen, as always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for the analysis. I wish we had more time. We would have discussed further into some of the domestic approaches that the Tinubu administration is attempting to make, issues around the state policing.
Next time, increase the time.
All of that. Perhaps. Time is never enough, is it? Gentlemen, thank you so much for the analysis this evening. It's good to see you as always. I appreciate you very much for taking the time. And that is a wrap on tonight's edition of the program. Daily Politics will be back next week, live at 8 p.m. exclusive as always on Trust TV. Until next time, I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.